by demerarawaves.com.
Good day with your major newscast. I am Jessica Daw. First with the highlights. The Alliance for Change believes that the opposition should sit on the board of Natural Resource Fund, although it does not agree with the new legislation governing the oil money. President Irfan Ali says the local content law is not aimed at shutting out investors. In the region, Trinidad and Tobago wants an independent investigation into the Coast Guard's shooting death of a Venezuelan toddler in a boat. The British Virgin Islands' Labour Commissioner does not like the idea of multi-year work permits. And internationally, Canadian police have arrested several persons and seized several guns in connection with an anti-vaxxer protest. The details of these stories and more in just a moment.
Advertise with us on News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM for best coverage on programs on motivation, beauty and health, parenting and relationships, knowing your rights, and a variety of enlightening content, and get value for your money. Call our helpful staff today on 223-1056 or 223-1041 today.
Now for the news in detail. The Alliance for Change AFC says it is keen on nominating an expert to be a member of the board of the Natural Resource Fund, NRF, to scrutinize spending of the oil money. The AFC and its coalition partner, a Partnership for National Unity, APNU, still maintain the new NRF Act is badly structured and was rammed through the House despite calls for consultation with the opposition and civil society. But AFC leader Kemraj Ramjatan says it is important that the opposition makes an effort to nominate a competent and independent person to sit on the board to see how the oil money is spent.
Good politicians that like good governance will then realize that although we oppose the act, it doesn't necessarily mean that the contents of the act cannot be as best as possible be fulfilled. And so although we have been in opposition and very vociferous opposition against this new act of 2021, that does not necessarily mean that if all things being equal, as you said, we are given an opportunity to nominate a competent, capable person, we will not do that. I think it will be bad politics on our part, and it will be not in the exercise of your right to go towards good governance.
AFC General Secretary David Patterson and Executive Member Kathy Hughes say it is important to see how the more than $600 million that has been withdrawn from the Natural Resource Fund will be spent.
The AFC is not willing to give up the very important role of scrutinizing how Guyana's monies are spent. We have a responsibility to ensure we can scrutinize, regardless of the way we may be treated or how we come to the table. But primarily, we have to make sure that that money is put to good use because it belongs to each and every Guyanese.
AFC Executive Member Kathy Hughes. The Alliance for Change wants the bipartisan Parliamentary Constitutional Reform Committee to discuss the possibility of power sharing. AFC leader Kemraj Ramjatan also wants the issue to be discussed among political parties and other stakeholders. He says that the APNU plus AFC administration had sought to involve non-governmental actors in national decision-making through the Natural Resource Fund Act.
It should go in both areas, and as a matter of fact, even stakeholder consultations all across. And that is one of the reasons why in our act, we put in 22 civilians to be the Transparency and Oversight Committee. Because in Guyana, a lot of civil society shy away from governance. And this was now a brand new fund that was going to be 10 times more than what revenue stream and so on will bring in about 5 years, the regular taxation and so on. And we wanted them to have a big handle on it, not this 5-man committee, 4 of which will be appointed by the president. We wanted to bring in the civil society to ensure that they have this oversight and lots more than the oversight, because we feel that that is a form of power sharing.
He made known his position in the wake of a democracy and governance assessment prepared for the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, saying that Guyana's 2 major political parties need to engage in power sharing. The 2021 assessment says the People's Progressive Party and the Partnership for National Unity need to move away from the current winner-take-all system. The USAID-funded report states that power sharing will ensure that the unprecedented wealth in oil reserves can be transparently and equitably managed for the benefit of all Guyanese. According to the assessment, the National Assembly, a possible mechanism for initiating reform discussions and formalizing power sharing, has been combative at best. President Irfaan Ali is assuring foreign investors that Guyana's local content legislation is not aimed at shutting out foreign investors. He was Monday morning addressing the opening of Baker Hughes's office at Land of Canaan, East Bank, Demerara.
The local content legislation is not meant in any way to displace anyone. It is not meant in any way to lock out any investor. It is not meant in any way to minimize foreign direct investment. It is not meant in any way to minimize global investment and footprint in Guyana. To do so will be foolish. To do so will be working in isolation of what the rest of the world is.
The president's assurance has come against the backdrop of concerns by the Caribbean private sector organization and some extra-regional companies that the local content legislation is protectionist. The Guyana Water Incorporated GWI says it is examining possible sites to construct a water treatment plant on Leguan, an island in the Essequibo River. The utility company says the new plant will be one of 5 along the coast to be constructed by GWI with funding from the Caribbean Development Bank, CDB. Neighborhood Democratic Council Chairman, as well as Leguan's Regional Democratic Council representative, welcomed the construction of the plant. The officials praised GWI and, by extension, the Guyana government for bringing treated water to Wakenham. They took the opportunity to also highlight that the island's water pressure is excellent. Now for the news in the region. Trinidad and Tobago's opposition United National Congress UNC wants an independent investigation into the Coast Guard's shooting death of a Venezuelan toddler. The incident occurred earlier this month in Trinidad and Tobago waters. The Coast Guard says that it was forced to open fire after the captain refused to stop and instead attempted to ram the Coast Guard vessel. The illegal boat was transporting a number of Venezuelans from Venezuela to Trinidad when the incident occurred. More in this report from CNC3 News.
The Prime Minister has made a few public statements on the Coast Guard's actions following the 1-year-old's death, with the Prime Minister saying the Coast Guard were merely protecting themselves and the country and that the child's death was an accident.
Is that a fact? Do we know that? How do we know that?
Senator Roberts says the Prime Minister is making definitive statements while an investigation is being done. That investigation is being spearheaded by the Coast Guard. But the UNC has very little confidence in that.
Really? The Coast Guard is going to investigate the Coast Guard?
The UNC believes this reeks of a cover-up and says the action of the state to return the other Venezuelan nationals on the boat proves that.
How can you have an investigation without eyewitness accounts? You are sending a mountain of evidence back to Venezuela?
It's why the senator wants an independent investigation. He said the world is now looking at how Trinidad and Tobago treats with this matter. And while the Prime Minister sounds certain of the events, the UNC is seeing some inconsistencies. For example, was the Coast Guard's thermal imaging system used at the time?
You would have also seen, Elvis, a little baby, would have given a tiny thermal image.
And the party wants to know why a Coast Guard vessel felt threatened by a pirogue, even if it was trying to ram them, as they say.
They were in a military-grade light craft, so therefore, to be rammed, these boats are designed to be rammed.
Now, the Coast Guard addressed that on February 6th, saying that the vessel they were in at the time was smaller than the Venezuelan's pirogue. Meanwhile, Senator Roberts wants the Prime Minister to know that what happened is a big deal, and that should be his focus right now, instead of the opposition leader.
That report coming from CNC3 News. Suriname is set to get another tranche of money from the International Monetary Fund, IMF. IMF and the Surinamese government have reached a staff-level agreement on the first evaluation of the Economic Recovery Program. Star News reports that the deal has yet to be approved by the IMF's Board of Directors. Finance and Planning Minister Armand Akbar Singh says that he is not afraid of the outcome of the evaluation. IMF board approval means a second tranche of the $690 million loan will be made available in March. In December, the first tranche of $56.4 million was deposited into the account of the Central Bank of Suriname. In a statement, the IMF said Suriname's economic program remains on track, meeting key quantitative targets and making continued progress on an ambitious set of reforms. In Barbados, the Hotel and Tourism Association is welcoming the end of the COVID curfew as well as an ease in other restrictions. The government in Bridgetown says the decisions have been made based purely on the science of the virus. More in this report from Barbados Today.
Government is getting the thumbs up for its decision to lift the curfew and ease restrictions starting today. At the weekend, Health Minister Ian Gooding-Edgell announced that pleasure craft boats and party cruises will be allowed to operate. Hikes will resume, and there will be no restriction on beach activities and parks, among other things. Chairman of the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association, Renee Copping, says direct tourism service providers, including catamarans, nightclubs, and tour companies, are delighted to be able to return to full capacity. And restaurants are also happy with the move so that they can extend their hours of operation. Meanwhile, the head of the COVID-19 monitoring unit, Ronald Chapman, has assured the public that the unit will continue to ensure a safe environment for all. At a weekend COVID-19 press conference update, Chapman urged Barbadians to act wisely and to use good judgment to keep COVID-19 cases low and to ensure a further reduction in restrictions.
We will continue to move deliberately. We will continue to move slowly, incrementally, to ensure that we reduce the level of, that we increase the freedoms or reduce the level of restrictions while ensuring a safe environment. We all welcome these eases. We all welcome a gradual return to the norm. And as we continue as a people to follow the protocols, to act wisely, and as the Prime Minister would say, to lend our hearts to wisdom, we will see a further falling of the cases, and we will also see further reduction of the restrictions.
Meanwhile, Chief Medical Officer, the Most Honorable Kenneth George, reported a 19% reduction in new COVID-19 infections over the last week in comparison with the last 7-day period.
And lastly, in the region, the British Virgin Islands Labour Minister, Michelle McLean, has suggested the multi-year work permits for foreign workers may put locals at a disadvantage in the workforce, while acknowledging in a recent virtual stakeholders meeting that there are provisions currently in the Labour Code to implement 3-year work permits. McLean was hesitant about using this as an across-the-board measure to alleviate the significant backlog faced by her department. BVI News reports that the Labour Commissioner says a foreigner may be granted a 3-year work permit, but a BVI national may want to return home but will not be able to get a specific job being held by a foreigner on a work permit. McLean told the stakeholders that she felt there couldn't be a blanket approach to addressing the particular challenge of processing work permits quickly. She said a clause may need to be implemented to somehow push the Labour Department to process permits in a workable time frame. Meanwhile, Labour Minister Vincent Whitley said he was in agreement with the Labour Commissioner on the matter and shared her concerns. The Labour Department has come in for considerable flack over the last few months for months-long delays in renewing work permits and approving new ones. A new system that allows for online work permit applications to be processed has been riddled with challenges since its implementation. This has been cited as the main reason for the backlog. The Labour Commissioner also argued that the new system required duplication of efforts on the part of an already severely short-staffed department. And here now is your international news coming from the BBC.
News. President Vladimir Putin has said that NATO has so far failed to address what he called basic concerns about Russian security. Speaking after meeting the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz in Moscow, Mr. Putin said he was prepared to continue discussing issues, including Ukraine and the stationing of medium-range missiles on European soil. But he said the issues were interlinked. He said Ukraine had failed to honour a peace deal to end fighting between the Ukrainian government and Russian-backed separatists in the eastern Donbass region. Mr. Putin was speaking with a simultaneous translation.
The topic of European security has been discussed in the context of current situation, in the context of the situation with Ukraine. As we know, Ukrainian authorities refused to follow through on Minsk agreements and on Norman agreement that was reached later on. There are a few principal elements: constitutional reform, amnesty, and special status for eastern Ukraine.
The men's world number 1 tennis player Novak Djokovic has said he's willing to miss the French Open and Wimbledon if that's the price for refusing to get a COVID jab. In an exclusive interview with the BBC, Djokovic distanced himself from the anti-vaccination movement, but insisted everyone had the right to choose what to put in their body. New rules have come into force in Italy requiring all workers over the age of 50 to be double vaccinated against COVID-19. Rachel Wright has the details.
Italy's new vaccine mandate stipulates that both public and private workers over the age of 50 must have a super green pass, showing they have been double vaccinated in order to go to work. After 5 days' absence, they will be suspended without pay. If they go to work without the pass, they could be fined up to $1,700. With around 1.4 million people still not vaccinated, the new ruling is likely to affect a lot of people. The over 50 vaccine mandate is scheduled to remain in force until the 15th of June. However, a government health minister has already suggested that it will be extended.
Singapore is coming under pressure from rights groups to stop the execution this week of 2 men found guilty of drug trafficking. The pair, one of them Malaysian, have been on death row for 12 years. Reports say they're due to be hanged on Wednesday. The United Nations Rights Office said the use of the death penalty for drugs offences was incompatible with human rights. Amnesty International described their case as appalling. Singapore has some of the strictest drugs laws in the world. This is Moira Alderson with the latest world news from the BBC. The EU's data protection supervisor has called for a ban on the deployment of controversial Pegasus spyware developed by an Israeli company. The watchdog warned Pegasus might lead to unprecedented intrusiveness, able to interfere with intimate aspects of daily life. Thousands of people have held rallies in Afghan cities to protest against Joe Biden's decision to seize almost half of Afghanistan's overseas funds. And Barasan Etirajan reports.
Afghan protesters shouted slogans expressing their anger at President Biden's decision to withhold half the $7 billion of Afghan central bank assets on U.S. soil. The other half has been set aside for humanitarian assistance in Afghanistan. One protester said only Afghans should be compensated as their country had been destroyed by war. On Monday, the Taliban warned they would be forced to reconsider their policy towards the United States unless Washington released the Afghan assets in full. Donor nations have frozen billions of dollars of Afghan funds and assets after the Taliban seized power 6 months ago.
US troops have joined several hundred soldiers from 10 African countries for an annual military exercise in Ivory Coast. The 2-week exercise is designed to strengthen coordination against Islamist militant groups in West Africa and the Sahel. A Spanish fishing trawler with more than 20 crew members on board has sunk off the east coast of Canada. 3 people have been rescued and a search for survivors is continuing. The Russian teenager Kamila Valieva has begun her bid for Olympic figure skating gold after a court cleared her to compete despite a positive drugs test. The 15-year-old stumbled on a jump during her 2.5-minute routine, but she ended the short programme with the leading score. She will return on Thursday for the free skate that will decide the medals. That's the latest world news from the BBC.
And that was your international news from the BBC. Here now is a recap of the highlights. The Alliance for Change believes that the opposition should sit on the board of the Natural Resource Fund, although it does not agree with the new legislation governing the oil money. The President says the local content law is not aimed at shutting out investors. In the region, Trinidad and Tobago wants an independent investigation into the Coast Guard's shooting death of a Venezuelan toddler in a boat. The British Virgin Islands Labour Commissioner does not like the idea of multi-year work permits. And internationally, Canadian police have arrested several persons and seized several guns in connection with an anti-vaxxer protest. And that there was your major newscast. I am Jessica Daw.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.